Good morning. My name is Robert Dummigan. I'm the pre-sales manager for the commercial and SMB markets at McAfee in EMEA, a member of the EMEA pre-sales management team. And this morning I want to take you through a webinar against the following agenda. I want to provide you first of all with an executive summary of a state of the nation, if you like, around security as it's relevant to small-medium business. I want to take a look at the high-level business trends, technology trends, and also security trends in the threat landscape that we're seeing that are driving and shaping security as it relates to small-medium business. I then want to take some time to share some best practices with you and to give you an overview of McAfee's SMB security solution, and also take the opportunity to provide you with an overview of the McAfee broader portfolio. And then finally, we'll provide you with some suggested next steps and some additional tools and resources that you can use to get some additional information. So, in terms of an executive summary, in McAfee's opinion and in McAfee's experience, and this is backed up also by our own threat research and that of independent third parties, SMB or small medium business is increasingly a target for cybercrime. And we increasingly see proof point of this in third party research. So I'm sure many of you are aware of the Verizon data breach report that gets released annually, and in the most recent report it discovered that 67% of all data breaches occurred in businesses with less than 100 employees, and 50% of those cases involved external hacking and involved malware specifically. And malware is increasingly becoming more motivated on stealing data and more financially motivated also. The point to note is that malware is designed to exploit a vulnerability in a very commonly deployed operating system or application. It really does not discriminate based on the size of the company. So the malware is equally relevant to the very largest enterprise right down to the very smallest, small-medium business. And when malware is successful and when hackers do breach the defenses of very large organizations like Amazon or Sony, for example, it makes the news, and it makes the news in a very big way. But when cybercrime exploits hit small-medium businesses, it rarely gets a mention, really. That does not mean that small-medium businesses do not get hacked or that the impact on these businesses is small. So, many of the customers that I speak to that have been the impact of cybercrime, it has a significant impact on their business. These are typically businesses that are operating on very, razor-thin margins, and they're very closely scrutinizing and watching every single business cost. So the cost of a data breach or the cost of an impact on business productivity because of a malware outbreak or cybercrime can be far greater to those types of organizations. So you might ask the question, why are cybercrime criminals increasingly targeting small-medium businesses? And there's two key reasons for that, really, and they're tightly coupled, really. It's easier, and there's less risk of them getting caught. And it's easier because small-medium businesses typically don't have the same sophisticated security infrastructure and depth of security countermeasure techniques in play as the large enterprises. So cybercriminals will target small-medium businesses as a result because it takes less effort and ultimately results in a faster payday. There's less risk of getting caught because small-medium businesses also lack the expertise typically to conduct forensic analysis after the event to try and understand who has hacked them, what they've taken, and all of that results in it making it less likely for the cybercriminals to get caught. I know from speaking to many customers and SMB-focused resellers right across EMEA that in the majority of cases their security consists of antivirus alone as the only line of defense, or perhaps antivirus with a firewall. And that type of a strategy really isn't sufficient in today's threat landscape. And there are third-party analysis and reports that have quantitatively measured that. So the recent Aberdeen report, for example, which is available from McAfee and from Quadsys, measured that a business that has an antivirus and firewall strategy only will ultimately end up paying 1.5 times more on security and issues related to security, such as loss of business productivity caused by malware outbreak, than an enterprise that has a layered defense in-depth security solution. So as a result of that, we're seeing a trend, and we're encouraging a trend of implementing layered security across file, email, and web. And that sort of a layered security solution should really be considered foundational, and your security posture should be built upon that baseline foundation of email, web, and file security. Finally, via cloud and security as a service delivery model, this type of layered security solution isn't out of reach to the type of small and medium business that I'm describing. So the type of organization has very, very small budgets and very, very limited IT resources. So small and medium business can achieve a defense in-depth layered security solution, significantly increase their security, improve their security posture, and reduce their business risks through leveraging that security as a service, that cloud security model. And that's a trend that we're seeing in the market. So what I also want to do is, as we go through the next 10 minutes or so, I just want to flesh out some of the detail behind these points and share McAfee's vision, if you like, for the security market, and in particular how the security market is applicable to small and medium business. And I want to start by sharing our high-level, macro-level business view, if you like, of the challenges that are being faced by small and medium business when it comes to security. And I do regularly speak to focused channel partners and even customers right across EMEA. Depending on their size and depending on the market segment, depending on the type of business that they have, their mindset can be quite different when it comes to security. So if I'm talking to a customer that is in the financial services market, they typically will have a lot of regulatory and compliance needs, and that's driving and shaping their mindset when it comes to security, and they're typically more proactive in implementing security. I also speak to other customers that are perhaps in different, have very different businesses, perhaps in retail, and they wouldn't have the same mindset. But really what I found from talking to customers and resellers is that there is a common set of high-level business challenges to all these different types of customers, whether they have 10 employees or hundreds and up to thousands of employees. They lack expertise, first of all. So many of the customers that I speak to are not IT experts. They don't have large IT teams, they don't have security teams, and they're not security experts. So deploying and managing complex security solutions is really far beyond their core competency, and they just want to focus their time on their business, really. So they need simple products that are very easy to use, but they also need some guidance from security experts and from security vendors and from our partners around just how much security they do need. They typically also lack budget. They operate in very tight budgets, so they're looking for cost-effective security solutions, affordable security solutions that are easy to scale as their business scales. Also in terms of lack of control, I guess I'm speaking to the phenomenon of bring your own device here, and a lot of the customers that I speak to are really challenged in this area because they need to secure not just their desktop, laptops and servers, but they also need to secure any device that touches business data, and this can be smartphones and tablet devices, for example. Lastly, lack of motivation. I think that's perhaps a little bit unfair. I mean, a lot of the customers that I have would have the motivation to implement security and to protect their business, but perhaps what they lack is a better awareness of what is in the threat landscape and how that's applicable to their business and how they should align security to their business to reduce the risks that exist to their business by cybercrime. Risks such as data loss, risks such as loss of business productivity caused by malware outbreak, for example. So, I also want to share some of the high-level technology drivers as opposed to business drivers that are shaping security. And when I do that, I talk about three key areas, really. And these are technology trends that are affecting the very, very largest enterprises right down to the very smallest enterprises globally. I mean, first of all, in terms of malware explosion, the continued growth in the sheer volume of malware is very significant. We've over 113 million unique malware samples in what we call our malware zoo, and we're adding 500,000 new malware samples to that zoo weekly. And then when you look at the trends and the detail behind that, you see that malware and cybercrime in general is becoming much more sophisticated, and in particular using much more sophisticated techniques to avoid detection and to remain undetected. And it's also becoming more financially motivated and more motivated at stealing data. And I'm going to share with you some more detail on the malware trends and explain to you what a typical attack looks like a little bit later in the presentation. Secondly, a technology trend that really is shaping security is the ubiquitous nature now of cloud as a service delivery model. And it's very attractive for a number of reasons, particularly to smaller enterprises. It can provide small businesses with access to the types of services and business applications that would typically have required a significant amount of on-premise infrastructure and resources. But cloud as a service delivery model is introducing a different set of risks and security challenges, both for the providers of the cloud services and also for the customers that are the enterprises, if you like, that are accessing those cloud services. I guess one example of that would be in the area of identity and authentication. So if you have a set of corporate security policies around passwords for on-premise access to email or to the corporate network, how do you ensure that same level of security policy can be applied when an enterprise's devices are being used to access services that are hosted in the cloud, and the credentials associated with that service access is held elsewhere in the cloud? And that's one of the challenges that I speak to customers about, and we have solutions in the area of two-factor authentication and cloud identity management to handle that, and also the complexity of accessing services in terms of implementing single sign-on, for example. Lastly, and definitely not least, the exponential growth in IP connected devices continues. So it depends really on what analyst you speak to. They all have a different idea on the specific figure. So some say there's going to be 15 billion, some say 50 billion by the year 2017. But overall, net-net, there's going to be a whole lot new IP connected devices in the world. It used to be that an endpoint from a security vendor point of view was a desktop, a laptop, or a server. An endpoint nowadays is also a smartphone. It's also a tablet device. It could be an ATM. If you're fortunate enough to own a fancy car, you may have an onboard embedded computer, and that's an IP connected device. And all of these different types of devices have different operating systems, different applications, and they're introducing new vulnerabilities and new risks. New risks to business, because business through bring your own device may allow one of their employees to connect to the corporate network and to corporate services like email via a smartphone or a tablet device. And that's really the challenge that a lot of our customers have, is the security is a challenge, but before the security and applying security policies against these devices, they need to be brought under management. So a lot of the customers I speak to are struggling with, how do I manage these devices and bring them under management in the same way that we've been able to bring our other types of endpoints under management in the past. So they're just some of the technology trends, if you like, that are shaping security. I did mention that I wanted to step through malware trend in particular with a little bit more detail, and I thought it might be interesting for you to take a closer look at some of the key trends that McAfee's research team are seeing in the area of malware. Bear in mind that malware is generically designed to exploit some sort of vulnerability, and it doesn't really discriminate for the mass volume of malware on company size. So when you look within the trends within the threat landscape, yes, there's a shift in focus towards mobile operating systems and towards Android in particular, but PC malware in Q4 2012 returned to its historic growth trend. So I said we've over 113 million malware samples in our zoo, including different types of viruses, worms, ransomware, rootkits, keyloggers, etc., etc. And we could speak all day about the various different categories of malware. I just wanted to pick out one example that I know from my experience talking to partners and customers is an area of concern, and that's in the area of ransomware malware. It's quickly becoming one of the newest cybercrime fads, if you like. You can see that graphically top right-hand side of this slide in terms of the number of net new ransomware samples discovered across Q3 and Q4 last year. That trend has continued into 2013. So, I mean, ransomware is a type of malware that prevents the user from using their device until they pay a certain amount of ransom to the cyber criminal, to the remote entity. And there's different types. There's the encryption ransomware, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The attack will encrypt your files with a password, so you can't access it until you pay a ransom. There's also lock screen ransomware. You'll get a full screen display image or a web page that prevents you from accessing everything in your computer. And it's a very complex area, the threat landscape, and what's happening in the area of malicious software. I just wanted to pick up and explain one example of one of the newest fads being ransomware. There are lots of other trends also. You see top left-hand corner, new master boot record attacks. Generally, we're seeing an increase also in the type of malicious software that's specifically designed to evade detection by operating system layer file filtering solutions, such as rootkits, and we've also seen malicious software go as low as the BIOS. So you see malware looking to hide and evade detection by installing itself in kernel memory, and also as low as the BIOS. So that's also a trend that we see emerging. So you've heard me mention at the start that antivirus alone or blacklist-based file filtering. So anti-malware and antivirus engines from any vendor typically work in the same way, by blacklisting what is known to be bad. That is no longer sufficient against the backdrop of this exponential growth in malware and the threat landscape. So a layered defense in depth strategy comprising at a minimum email, web and file, is foundational for security for any enterprise operating in the cyber world. When I say that, a lot of our customers and partners will say, can you please explain the detail behind that and why that is the case? And when I get asked that question, I like to frame the conversation, if you like, around the graphic that you're looking at currently, which is the 4 phases of an attack, looking at multi-phase threat behavior. So we have a very, very large research organization within McAfee Labs. They've researched the behavior of malware over many years, and they've modeled this multi-phase 4 stages of an attack and ran some of the most common malware through this to show that every attack follows the same broad 4 stages. Starting with first contact on the left, and this really is how the malware first comes into contact with the victim. And there are many different ways that that can take place in a physical way, for example, via a USB key, for example. Our threat research indicates that in the vast amount of cases, the malware comes into first contact through either web or mail, or both in a blended attack. So examples of that would be a drive-by download from a malicious website, an email phishing attack with embedded URL to a malicious website, for example. After that, it's all about exploiting some sort of vulnerability to execute locally. So the malware is designed to find and exploit a vulnerability either in the operating system or in some sort of application. It then writes itself to disk, and once it's written to disk, it can move on to the next phase, which is all about preserving itself, persisting on the system so that it can survive reboot, and establishing a presence, hiding from software, for example. And that's the area where we're seeing an increasing prevalence of rootkits, which is specifically designed to hide beyond and below the operating system to evade detection. So once it's established its presence, it then carries out the payload, if you like, the specific business logic that the attack is attempting to accomplish, the malicious activity. And this could be a wide range of very scary things, and increasingly the malicious activity is focused on stealing data or extorting money. It's financially motivated. So, bot activities is one example of that, where the malware establishes connectivity through a backdoor with a command and control center, a bot herder, and then that device is used within broader distributed denial of service attacks. And of course, we've also just looked at the ransomware example. So what I like to explain at this stage is, so here are the 4 stages of an attack. At what stage does antivirus come into play? So an antivirus-only blacklisting file filtering solution does not come into play until phase 3, the established presence phase. So it starts protecting the endpoint very, very late in the attack cycle, after the initial contact and after the malicious software has written itself to the endpoint, to the device, and established a presence. And even at this point, the malware will only be detected if we have an existing signature for it, either locally in the DAT file or in our threat intelligence service, or GTI service. So even then, it's only blocking known malware samples. So AV alone does not provide any protection, for example, for zero-day threats or for unknown threats. And it's really because of this reason that we're seeing the following trend, and of course this is a trend that we're promoting as best practice. Enterprises of all sizes are increasingly seeing the need, either on a proactive basis because of an awareness, or on a reactive basis because they've been the victim of a malware outbreak or of data loss. So they're complementing antivirus with additional layers of security for a more defense in depth strategy. And I know that when I'm saying this, perhaps some of you are thinking, yeah, this is fairly straightforward and should be best practice, but many of the customers that I speak to are challenged in this area and have an awareness or a belief that an AV approach alone is enough. In particular, security against email and web threat vectors should be considered mandatory and foundational in order to protect in that initial or that first phase of an attack that we've just looked at. And in making sure that the infection and the malware can't impact network, in particular network bandwidth and related IT resources. In this sort of new normal layered security, endpoint antivirus really is a layer and just one layer, as opposed to the only line of defense. And endpoint antivirus is the last layer of defense. It's not the only layer of defense. So one other point to note on this slide also concerns the bottom, device management. So many of the customers that I'm speaking to for the first time are proactively budgeting for mobile device management solutions, as opposed to reacting to losing a smartphone with company email and having bad stuff happen to them. They're actually proactively budgeting for and implementing device management as a layer in the solution, recognizing that they need to protect any device that touches business information and business data. So that's a trend that we're also very strongly seeing in the market. So finally, in terms of the high-level trends that we see shaping security, is the ubiquitous nature of cloud-based services, the prevalence of the cloud, if you like. So research that we've seen indicates that today typical small medium businesses are using up to 4 cloud-based services on average. That's up from on average 1 in 2009, and it's expected to grow to 7 by 2015. And it's no surprise, because cloud solutions give small businesses in particular a lot of benefits. It gives them access to technology that was previously only accessible to large enterprises through very large infrastructure investments and very large investments in operational resource to manage it. So instead, small and medium businesses can actually get access to the same products, but at affordable pricing. And another major benefit is that cloud-based services are always, right size and easy to scale and agile in terms of scaling, because there's no on-premise infrastructure. It's typically subscribed to on a subscription basis, which can be paid monthly or annually. So that's very attractive to a small medium business that's looking to not lay out a lot of capital expenditure in terms of physical resources, and is also looking to pay for the service as their business grows. One thing that a lot of the customers that I speak to aren't aware of is that security is also available as a cloud-based service, and in fact it's one of the most common cloud applications after the usual sales and marketing, CRM systems, file sharing, etc., etc. So really, I mean, what I hoped to do in this first section was just provide you with a macro level view, if you like, a high level view of the trends in the threat landscape, the technology trends, and also the business challenges and business trends that we see shaping security, and share some of the feedback that I have from my customer and partner discussions. Over the next 10-15 minutes or so, I want to change gear a little bit and present McAfee's solution for small medium business. And I'm conscious that I don't want to make this too much a sales pitch. So what I hope to do also is to share some best practices with you, and overall go into a little bit more detail about best practices in terms of implementing that layered security defense in depth solution comprising file, email, and also web. So it probably, if you ask the question, what should an SMB security solution look like, it probably doesn't come as any surprise to you, given what I've said and what you've heard about the threat landscape and the key trends shaping security, that I would recommend two things: a layered security solution, and secondly, that this should be implemented and offered as a cloud-based service. And that is McAfee's well, one of McAfee's solution towards small medium business, and it's the one that I typically would promote and have a discussion around in the first instance. And I'll explain why as we go through the next few slides. I mean, most of all, it provides better security across all of the key threat vectors. So it provides cloud-based email and web, so that unwanted and malicious content is blocked in the cloud before it ever reaches the enterprise network, which optimizes bandwidth, of course. And it also provides endpoint security, which safeguards desktop laptops and servers. It's always right-sized, and it's easy to deploy and easy to manage. Deployment is simple, so there's no need for any on-site infrastructure. There's no need for a separate management server. All the management is done via McAfee's Security Center console, and that's in the cloud. So you can manage your security from anywhere. And that's managing security down to the level of granularity of managing security policies across file, across web, across email, encryption, data loss prevention security policies for individual users. So there's no lack of control or loss of control from accessing a cloud-based service. It's very agile to scale also because of the no need for on-site infrastructure. So scaling involves simply purchasing additional subscriptions, and that can be done on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis. So I mean, the best part for me as a security guy, as a McAfee security guy, is the better security and our ability to offer. When I speak to my customers, I can offer them confidently the same security that's used by the very largest government defense organizations and multinational companies globally. Everything's managed in the background. From a better security point of view, I guess what that means is that we, as McAfee, managing the service, can react much faster to any malware outbreak. There's real-time updating and upgrading, so there's no need to wait for and to do anything manually regarding patch releases or DAT releases. No need to go from system to system installing any latest versions. Everything is taken care of and managed in the cloud by McAfee. So what I want to do is I want to step through web, email, and file or endpoint and describe McAfee's solution and why McAfee's solution is the way it is, and share with you some of the conversations that I've had with customers. And earlier we discussed the 4 phases of an attack, and that the most prevalent threat vector in that initial contact stage is the web. The web is the primary source of the majority of cybercrime today. And you might ask the question, then why is that, right? I'm supposed to answer that question. I always like to take a look at the development of the web, where it is now, from where it started out as. And it started out basically as, I describe it as brochureware. So the client would browse to a website and would typically view statically displayed text for the most cases via HTML pages. But today's web is much different. It's much richer and much more collaborative. So there's much more interaction between the client and the server with the website and the folks that are browsing, in terms of watching videos, installing applications, uploading content, downloading content, clicking through an embedded URL. This sort of environment has created the optimal environment for distribution of malicious software and for cybercrime. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you see a wide range of security issues in the press relative to a lot of these new web websites, or Web 2.0, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, for example. So really the customers I speak to are challenged with security primarily, but also control. And another major challenge that customers have is that their employees are not just exposed to these threats at work when they're connected to the internet via the corporate network. A lot of the times businesses allow their users to take their personal devices home to access Wi-Fi in a Starbucks coffee shop, or to a lot of the times these devices are used not just by the employees, but their partners, their children are using these devices, and when they're accessing the internet directly, that introduces a whole lot of other challenges in terms of how these enterprise devices may be compromised. So again, when I speak to customers, they have two key business needs when it comes to web security: security and control. And when you break it down for security, the business need is make sure my business productivity is not impacted by web-borne malware, particularly from Web 2.0. And then when you break down control, it's make sure that my employee isn't sitting on Facebook for the entire day, that I have some visibility or control over that, monitoring excessive usage of Web 2.0 so that it doesn't impact business productivity, or so that user isn't accessing inappropriate content in any way. From a security perspective, we provide inbound and outbound protection, protection securing every aspect of Web 2.0 traffic. And we do that by using the same gateway anti-malware engine that's utilized in our web gateway security appliance that's used by the largest enterprise customers globally. So that gateway anti-malware engine, it doesn't just block known bad files. It also proactively looks for malicious behavior, for intent and for purpose. So it scans a web page's active content, and it looks at the predictive behavior to proactively protect against unknown threats, zero-day threats, blended threats, phishing sites, and targeted attacks. And it also leverages Global Threat Intelligence, which is our cloud-based threat intelligence service, which keeps our SaaS solution up to date with the very, very latest threats that we're seeing in the globe. And I'll explain to you GTI and what that is in a little bit more, a little bit later. In terms of control, the solution allows our customers to really enforce their own internet usage policy. It provides access rules that are tamper-proof, and also allows policy control down to the user level. They can be applied on a per user and on a per application basis. So an example of that would be Robert Dummigan is allowed to browse Facebook during lunch, but he's not allowed to upload video content, for example, as it's using up a lot of valuable bandwidth within our network. And of course, we're also able to strip out and block objectionable or regulated content such as pornography. So, any traffic that violates a policy can be blocked before it enters the network. Another initial point of contact that we looked at in the first, in the anatomy of an attack, that first phase, is email. Email remains the largest communication medium on the internet. So depends on your point of view. Perhaps instant messaging may at one stage overcome it, but it does remain the largest communication medium. There's something like 144 billion emails sent a day, and it's because email is the lifeblood of business that it's become so. So of those 144 billion emails a day, more than 500 million of them, typically, more than 500 million statistically, contain email phishing attacks, for example, and that's one form of one way in which email has been abused. Phishing scams. They've gone from very generic to very sophisticated. From phishing to spear phishing. So, not just emails impersonating familiar websites, but it's getting very focused and targeted and personal in the information that they're conveying to trick the user into revealing more information, or perhaps clicking on an embedded link that looks to be trusted, but that is really downloading malware onto the machine. And really, the key email security needs are to detect and block spam, and also to filter email attachments for any form of malicious software, and the message content for phishing attacks. And overall, the need is to do all of that before the traffic actually arrives at the network. And the way to do that is to do it in the cloud. And hosting email security in the cloud allows us to implement a lot of layers of technology from an email filtering point of view, which would typically require a significant amount of computing power and will be outside of the reach of a lot of smaller companies. So the solution is a proxy-based approach. It filters email in real time and leverages email filtering that exists in the email security appliances in use by our largest customers around the world. And it goes through 5 layers of filtering, from primary filtering, just blacklisting against email addresses, including integration with global threat intelligence, through to a filter to detect attack filters, denial of service detection, virus and worms, spam, and then scanning the actual content. So overall, the benefit is that you can decrease bandwidth cost by dropping unwanted mail in the cloud before it ever reaches your network, and also decrease the cost of malware cleanup and reduce the impact on business productivity caused by malware distributed via email. So, lastly, in terms of the 3 key areas, the 3 vectors we look at, file web, it's endpoint. And endpoint is constantly under attack. Like I've said, there's 113 million malware samples in McAfee's malware zoo, and that's expected to be 120 million by the next quarter. And even if you have email and web, and they're detecting 99.99% of malicious software and attacks, eventually that 0.01% will get through. So you need that last line of endpoint protection, that last line of endpoint security. And also, there are other points of initial first contact and other attack vectors, such as USB devices connected into an endpoint and transferring malware in that way through auto-run or whatever, So, endpoint protection is considered the table stakes, if you like. It's something that you absolutely must have as that last and final line of defense in order to be protected. And we have endpoint security, which does the scanning and the blocking of malware, but also we have additional capabilities on the endpoint. So, for example, desktop firewall, which can help block the computer from making contact perhaps with a command and control center aligned to bot activity, or the firewall can stop the computer from sending malicious softwares on the network to other computers. We also include Site Advisor, which brings an element of web security to the endpoint. So it's necessary definitely to perform inspection, scanning, blocking of email and web traffic in the network, but also it's possible to change the behavior of users on the endpoint using Site Advisor. So Site Advisor knows which websites are infected with malware, or which sites produce excessive pop-ups, which sites engage in fraudulent practices, and it operates a red, amber, green policy, so that the user can be aware, for example, based on the search results from Google, which results are safe with no risk, are minor risk in yellow, so they should proceed with caution, or represent a major risk, and they shouldn't browse to. So they're just some of the capabilities of the endpoint security. So I mentioned global threat intelligence, and I wanted to explain what that is. GTI really is the security DNA that runs through all McAfee solutions, including SaaS. So it allows our customers to leverage over 27 years of security intelligence, which has been gathered by McAfee across hundreds of millions of sensors globally. So, leveraging external threat intelligence is really key against the backdrop of this growth in threat landscape, this growth in malware. So GTI complements local anti-malware and anti-spam techniques to close the protection gap and prevent against zero-day attacks. It works because it receives anomalous behavior from hundreds of millions of deployed sensors globally. It examines and inspects that anomalous behavior, taking a 360-degree look at it, and then turns that information, that intelligence, and provides it back to those devices as reputation information. It's completely unique to McAfee in terms of scale and scope. So, you know, other vendors do have some form of this, but for intelligence to be of real value, it has to be of sufficient scale and scope. I'll give you an example of that. If you consider a web gateway in a bank in Tokyo, and it comes across a malicious file, queries GTI, and GTI marks that file as being malware. Fast forward a couple of minutes to an endpoint in a university in Scotland, for example. Through endpoint security as a service, it sees the same file, SAS scans the file, and based on the intelligence learned a couple of moments previously in that web gateway in that bank in Tokyo, it knows it to be a malicious file, and so it's blocked. So you have an endpoint in one part of the world leveraging intelligence gathered from a gateway layer product in a different part of the world in order to make security decisions. So overall, in terms of a summary, I wanted to explain the key need of many of our SMB customers being to improve their security, reduce risks posed to their business in a way that would not require any additional operational resource, and in a way that would be easy to deploy and easy to manage. And I hope that I've achieved, explained how McAfee's security service can do that and achieves those goals. Key point is that this solution grows with your business, and our go-to-market is to offer the individual point products, but also suites where, for example, you can deploy endpoint with email with web. So it's very quick to add users and to add products. All solutions are managed in the cloud with integration to Active Directory, for example, to ensure that you know, more granular user-based security policies can be applied, and that no element of control is lost. I do just in the last couple of minutes want to provide you with a very quick overview also of McAfee's solution portfolio. So I've presented and discussed to you this morning what I believe to be foundational security capabilities. Of course, McAfee has a very broad and deep portfolio of security solutions outside of what I've just discussed today, and we're helping from the very, very largest enterprises and government organizations globally down to small businesses across a wide range of solutions, from helping them around data center transformation right through to web and identity, real-time situational awareness, for example. In terms of next generation endpoint, specifically, you know, we have an on-premise next generation endpoint security solution which provides a unified point of command and control via our e-policy orchestrator on-premise endpoint security management tool, bringing defense in depth to a new layer, really, to a new level, from the chip to the cloud. And it provides not just blacklisting antivirus, but also application control or whitelisting. It provides hardware-assisted security, database security, protecting every device from the desktop right through to the data center, inclusive of mobile. And that's just a very brief overview of the solution portfolio in terms of next generation endpoint and the on-premise solutions. So that's a wrap-up, if you like, the end of the presentation of McAfee's portion of the webinar. Can I just ask back to Kristen and to Quadsys, if we have some Quadsys colleagues on the line still on the webinar that want to make some comments here or take over.
Hi there, Rob. It's Jess. We've had some questions come through. Are you happy to answer them?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so the first question today is how mature is SaaS technology as it's proven enough to protect my business?
Okay, so our cloud security has been used for over 10 years. and we've customers ranging from that have tens of users up to thousands of users. So it's one of the most mature cloud security solutions in the market, and security in general delivered as a cloud-based service has been around for over 10 years, and McAfee has been there from the very outset. So the short answer would be very mature.
Brilliant. And if I leveraged cloud security, do I lose the ability to apply security policies on an individual user basis?
No. So the cloud-based management console allows setup and application of security policies down to the level of granularity of individual users. So you don't lose the ability to control individual users and apply policies against individual users. That's still provided for within the management console across all of the endpoint, email, and web-specific feature function capabilities that I discussed through the presentation. So.
Right, thank you. And how can you say that McAfee Cloud Security provides the same level of protection as on-premises solution? How can that be?
Well, okay. Well, I mean, of course, if you're a very, very large financial institution in the City of London and you've got a very, very large team of security operational folks, and you've implemented a very strong and layered security solution across firewall, network intrusion prevention, through to data center security, database, etc. Well, of course, with McAfee's cloud security for email, file, and web, you're not getting the same level of security. It's not an apples for apples comparison. But in terms of the foundational capabilities of implementing anti-malware, of implementing for endpoint, of implementing email security and web security, if we consider those three vectors and those foundational security capabilities, then you are getting access to the same level of security that our largest enterprises have access to, because our cloud-based solution is based on the same security appliances. McAfee Web Gateway, McAfee Email Gateway, that those same large enterprises are using. Also, the Global Threat Intelligence, GTI Threat Intelligence in the cloud service, that's the same cloud-based threat intelligence and reputation information that's used by every McAfee customer globally. So in that respect, it is exactly the same.
Brilliant, thank you. And during your speech, you mentioned a number of security challenges faced by SMB enterprises. What do you believe to be the biggest issue?
So in terms of security, it's simply external cyber attacks. That's the number one security threat, as opposed to internal issues around data leakage from that perspective. So it's about external attacks in terms of security. And the customers I speak to feel more and more vulnerable because they see an increasing level of sophistication of those attacks. But I suppose more than anything, the biggest challenge from my point of view is that a lot of the customers that I speak to typically lack both the resources and especially the expertise, not just to deploy and manage security, but really to understand what security countermeasures are mandatory to protect their business, so that it won't be business impacting and it won't inhibit business. So, I always encourage customers that have these, limitations in terms of resources to consider a hosted and a managed cloud-based security solution. That's why I'm a very strong advocate and passionate about cloud-based security, because it can really help those types of customers that are just really struggling to understand, what it is they should do and how they're going to get the expertise and the resources to achieve sort of foundational level security, if you like.
Fantastic. And final question, when do you decide to offer on-premises security instead of McAfee Cloud Security? How do I know what the best fit is?
I suppose it's like any pre-sales discussion. I always start the discussion, make sure that I understand the end customer's business, that I understand the challenges that they have in their business and how we should align security with that. The question I always ask, and this goes back to the previous question and answer, is I always ask about the existing levels of expertise and resources in particular that customer has. So there's no point in me leading and promoting and having a discussion about an on-premise security solution that requires infrastructure and servers if they just simply don't have the expertise or the time in order to manage that infrastructure. So once I can persuade my customers to implement security across file, email and web, and to ensure that they have got global threat intelligence enabled and are accessing that, I'm happy. But for customers that are challenged with resources, I'll always promote software as a service as the most affordable and the most easily scalable way of achieving things. So I hope that sort of wasn't too waffly and makes sense.
That's absolutely perfect, Rob. Brilliant. And now I'd like to thank you very much, Rob, for your presentation today. And Sarah from Quadsys would just like to say a few words.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you again to Jess and Robert for taking over this morning. I just wanted to have a chat with you guys to tell you a bit about Quadsys if you haven't already worked with us in the past. Quadsys was set up in 2008 to provide specialist comprehensive ICT security and infrastructure solutions. It was started with just 4 members in the team, and we are now 14 full-time staff with a collective experience of over 30 years in the industry. We are based outside Oxford in Kidlington, where we have secured over 500,000 endpoints with encryption software across the public and private sector. Quadsys has consistently grown year on year to become an ever-expanding successful ICT service provider, trusted and depended upon by some of the most widely known companies in the UK. We are a long-standing McAfee elite partner, and we were delighted to become one of the first to achieve exclusive McAfee ASA status. This means we can offer the cloud-based solutions which Rob has highlighted in the presentation beforehand, which we can help protect you from malicious attacks. McAfee SMB solutions from Quadsys, we can give you the same technology provided to larger companies but at a fraction of the cost, and you can find more details on our website. I'd just like to thank everyone for attending today. On the screen now you'll be able to see our contact details, so if you'd like to either get in contact with myself or Robert, the details are there now. I just wanted to let you know the presentations will be available on demand as of Tuesday next week, and we will send you out the details on email in plenty of time. Just want to thank Rob, Jess again for taking over today, and apologies for the difficulties, but we hope you found the presentation insightful, and if you do have any further questions, please feel free to get in contact with either of us, and just want to thank you for your time.